Throughout the history of Beyblade, we've had bad gimmicks, good ones, and everything in between. And whether these gimmicks are from one-off Beyblades or even full evolution lines, it's been pretty diverse. But the gimmicks slash powers that I want to talk about today come from one evolution line, and that is Lucifer. This Beyblade Burst lineup has 3 beys in its evolution line, and they can all make claims for being worse than the other, or just bad in general, but there's also good things about them, so let's just talk about it. But first, this video is sponsored by Mall of Toys. Leon Claw and Viper Tail have just released, so go and pick those up, as well as Dran Sword, Hell Scythe, some of the older Beyblade X releases. Mall of Toys also has pre-orders up for the November releases as well, which are 2 sets and 1 booster, and we don't really know what they are yet. The link's in the description down below, or scan the QR code and make sure to use code ilinnuc to get 5% off of your first purchase. So now let's move on to the beys. The first one is Variant Lucifer, and this one released during Beyblade Burst Sparking. Beyblade Burst Sparking, or the Western version Beyblade Burst Surge, is the 5th season of Beyblade Burst, and I remember the season quite fondly. A lot of people don't. I generally like the idea of the legends returning, and I also like the villain of the season with Lane, who uses Variant Lucifer. Lane is this kind of pot-headed, power-hungry, wanting to be better than everybody else blader who is really strong right off rip. But moving on to the bey he used, we have Variant Lucifer. And in the anime, it was definitely pretty cool. It featured a cool looking barrier gimmick, which made Lucifer a defensive beast and made it almost impenetrable. But the actual bey itself was largely kind of useless. The main issue with Lucifer was the 2D chassis, and say what you will about the chassis system in general, whether it was good or bad for Beyblade Burst, 2D was not great. It does have its uses, I guess. There are some people that swear by 2D up against like opposite spin matchups, like up against a left spin bey. I just think it's useless. Whenever you launch Variant Lucifer, it does have the barrier gimmick like in the show, except it just kills the stamina potential of the bey. These little pink tongues can slap against other Beyblades, it can slap against the stadium, and if you launch it slightly off, it's gonna rip around the stadium for like 2 seconds. Okay, yes, you can awaken 2D by battling it enough to where the pink pieces break off, or you could break them off yourself. It's not like you're awakening the variable driver, where the rubber kind of wears down over time. We're talking about breaking rubber pieces off a chassis. I don't agree with that as a defense. There were decent things about Variant Lucifer though. First, we have the driver, which is Mobius. Not Morbius, Mobius. I'm not the biggest expert on competitive parts and win rates and all of that, but for the most part, at least back then, people thought Mobius was pretty decent. I can't really say much about the Lucifer blade. It was pretty small, and I think there was better options at the time. The part that I remember getting the most hype was definitely the Lucifer chip. Variant came out at the very beginning of Beyblade Burst Sparking, where a lot of the chips were kind of light, kind of plasticky, and then you see the Lucifer chip having metal. And everybody knows in Beyblade Burst, the heaviest Beyblade wins. Okay, that's not fully true, but the metal in the chip was definitely useful, and a lot of people were using this in their competitive combos. But that's Variant Lucifer, and I've said multiple times over the years that I really don't like this bey, especially its stock combo, and I've also gotten comments blasting me for saying that. And speaking of blasting, let's talk about the evolution to Variant Lucifer, which is Lucifer The End. From Season 3 of Beyblade Burst onwards, pretty much every main character starter bey got an end of season evolution, and Lucifer The End is one of them. And in my opinion, Beyblade Burst Sparking had the worst end of season evolution beys. I mean, do you guys even remember Hyperion Burn or Helios Volcano? Probably not. Lucifer The End was one of those end of season releases, and it is definitely a chunky boy, and it gets rid of the barrier gimmick that Variant was known for. Or at least it kind of gets rid of the barrier gimmick. It doesn't have the pink tab tongue things that pop out anymore. The gimmick on the end ring is that whenever the bey gets a little bit closer to bursting, the black armor piece of the ring would kind of pop downwards, and in the anime, this kind of shot beys into the stadium to burst or cause destruction. Unfortunately, real life is not an anime though. So in real life, the beys gimmick wasn't nearly as cool. It would just kind of pop down and then become a free spinning ring. Once again, I'm not a competitive expert, but I do not think I've seen any competitive winning combo use the end. But just like its older brother variant, there are parts in this bey that are actually pretty decent, or were decent at the time. Let's start with the driver. We have Drift, and Drift was huge because of the fact it's so big, and it also has that free spinning tip, just like Morbius, just like Mobius. I can't believe I said Morbius. Just like Mobius and kind of like Bearing, it was really good for stamina. And because of its size, it was good for life after death. A lot of combos were using this. In fact, I believe the major upgraded version of Drift, which was Metal Bearing Drift, is still really hard to come by, and it's still a really expensive part because it's so good. The Beyblade Wiki even says that Metal Bearing Drift is the ultimate driver. So the older, not as good version Drift is of course going to be good as well. And just like variant Lucifer, the chip that is on Lucifer The End, which is called Lucifer 2, had metal on it, it was heavier, and it had a little bit of a rubber burst stopper in there. So this was really popular for competitive combos as well. So for a while, those were the only two beys in the Lucifer lineup. That is until Beyblade Burst Ultimate. Beyblade Burst Ultimate was the lineup from Takara Tomy that did not have an anime behind it. In the West, there is Beyblade Burst Quad Strike, which is these Ultimate beys, but in Japan, there is no Quad Strike. And Barricade Lucifer was the last Beyblade released in the Burst Ultimate lineup and the final standard release in all of Beyblade Burst. And Barricade is the one that I have kind of the least to say about. It brings back the barrier gimmick from variant Lucifer, although I think it does it in a better way. Instead of the tongues popping downwards during battle, they kind of spin in the same direction as the Beyblade, so it's a little bit better. Is it really useful though? I don't really think so. And for the rest of the parts, we have Bearing Mobius, which was definitely an upgrade to Mobius, but I believe there were just better options at the time, like Metal Bearing Drift. And I don't even think the Lucifer DB core was really that loved either. Maybe because it was released at the very end of Beyblade Burst, or there were just better combos out at the time, like Dynamite Belial combos. But while the actual product may not be that great, at least it looked cool in the Quad Strike anime. Actually, it didn't, because it was not in it at all. Yeah, that was definitely a really odd decision, and I know Zenki has talked about this quite a few times. Hasbro never released their own version of Barricade Lucifer. Maybe it's because they couldn't find a way to shoehorn Lane into the anime, even though I think it would have been kind of cool. They could have at least put Barricade Lucius in a set, but they didn't. Whether you like the Hasbro versions of these Takara Tomy beys or not, I believe that Barricade is one of the very, very few that did not get a Hasbro release. But that was the Lucifer lineup. Why I decided to make a whole video talking about Lucifer, I have no idea. I was going through my tub of beys and I happened upon variant Lucifer again, and I thought about how some parts were good, but it also has one of the dumbest gimmicks of all time, so maybe I should make a video on it. But that is going to wrap up this video, guys. If you liked it, hit the like button down below and hit subscribe to join the Nook Nation. I'll see you in the next one. Have fun and bay away.